Hello there. My name is Mackenzie. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you so much for being here. Today we are doing another book versus its adaptation. We are talking about Howl's Moving Castle by Wynne Jones. This is technically a trilogy. However, upon looking up what the other books are about, it is a light trilogy where there's no real overarching story, I don't feel like. In the second and third books, we're following different people in different magical situations, and that's it. Howl's and Sophie's story really ends in this book, so we're really just going to talk about this book versus the movie by Miyazaki. Hideo Miyazaki, I believe is his name. The Miyazaki films are so beautiful. They're like Disney in Japan. They're that big. They're so amazing. When me and my husband first started dating, he showed me all of the Miyazaki movies, including, or starting with, this one, and I fell in love with it. It was absolutely beautiful. It was everything to me, continues to be everything to me. I watch it every night to go to bed. I don't like sleeping when it's quiet, so I put on a movie, and I put on Howl's Moving Castle. I feel like a lot of us actually do that. So before we get too deep into the video, I do want to say spoilers ahead for the book and the movie. If you haven't seen either of them, I recommend both of them. So if you would like to enjoy either of these or both of these before the video, then please do so, and then come back here because this will be fun. I did end up tabbing this book. There were three main things that I was on the lookout for. Interesting information and or clarifying information. Because throughout the movie, there are things that just happen, and it feels like you're supposed to be in on the joke, but like, you're not, and it's like, what's happening? So it was clarifying information, then things that were different from the movie, and then, is Sophie a witch? Because in the movie, it's much more ambiguous that she may be or may be not be a witch. In the book, it is definitive. She is a witch. It is claimed that she is a witch. She does magic. It's a whole thing. It's amazing. So I'm going to put this... I didn't turn on any of my lights. So I'm just going to take this down and put this right there, so that way you guys can see the cover the whole time. And let's get going. So there are like two main changes in this, maybe three. Two to three main changes from the book to the movie that really create a domino effect of differences. So you remember in the beginning where Sophie's walking to the bakery to go see her sister, and then two soldiers stop her and like really creep her out, and they're really creepy. And Howl comes in, and he saves her, and he's like, ooh, come with me, I'll walk you, I'll be your escort, and it's so cute. And then, like, the Witch of the Waste henchmen come, and they, like, try to kidnap, I guess, or try to attack them, and they run away, and then he, like, deposits her on the, like, veranda, and he's like, that's my girl. That's my favorite part. It doesn't happen in the book. It doesn't. In fact, it's worse. Instead of the soldiers, it's Howl. It's Howl who makes her feel uncomfortable. And I'm just like, damn it. Like, it was such a cute movie scene where they float and they fly and it's beautiful, and like none of that happens. Like, it's May Day, and so it's much more of a celebration day, and you know, about basically hooking up and like hanging out, dating on that day. And Howl comes up to her and it was like, hey, little mouse, wanna get a drink? And she's like, no, I'm just going to the bakery. And he was like, oh, do you want me to walk you? And she's like, no, and then runs. And like, that's it. That's the whole scene. So at least it's not as creepy in the book as it is in the movie, but it's still Howl. And then there's still like no cute scene, then there's no Witch of the Waste who sees them, right? Which would mean, why would then the Witch of the Waste come to Sophie's house, to the Hatter, later on, and like curse her? There would be no reason why the Witch of the Waste came to Sophie. And here's where one of the small changes comes in. In the book, Sophie has two sisters, a full-blooded sister and a half-sister, because her mom, the owner of that hat shop in the movie, her mom is her stepmom, which is kind of why she's a little bit, like, not as warm and motherly, I feel like, in the book and the movie. It doesn't feel the same. So her two sisters, Letty and Martha. So Letty and Martha get sent off. Letty gets sent to the bakery to go be an apprentice there, and Martha gets sent off to go into the Folding Valley to study under a witch, to be a witch's apprentice. What ends up happening, they are traveling and they end up switching places. So Martha pretends that she's Letty and goes to the bakery. And Letty pretends that she's Martha and goes to the witch to be an apprentice. Okay, now here's where it gets super complicated. Are you already following the complicated, sister switching scheme? So Howl, in the beginning of the book, is courting Letty. Not the Letty who is actually Martha, but the Letty who is pretending to be Martha. Because once Letty, who is pretending to be Martha, goes to the witch who she's supposed to apprentice under, the witch realizes that she is in fact Letty and not Martha. She thinks it's all fine and good because both of the sisters are happy and comfortable where they are, and they're both being taught. They're in the same position, basically, just apprenticing in different places. So the witch allows Letty to stay as Letty and be an apprentice under her. Howl is courting that Letty throughout the whole thing. So, the Witch of the Waste, who is still in love with Howl, who still wants Howl, in a sense, not the same sense, oh my god, not the same sense as in the movie, a different sense. Not like a too sexual sense, but like almost a horror sense. We'll get there. So the Witch of the Waste knows that Letty exists. She doesn't know, for Howl, the Letty and Howl that are courting. Letty doesn't like Howl. Howl likes Letty because he just likes the chase. Okay, are we clear? Let's move on. The witch knows that Letty is existing. She just doesn't know where she exists. So because Howl was in Market Chipping, the place where Sophie's hat shop is and where she's staying in her, because it's her family's home. So they kept one daughter to be apprenticing and then they sent the two other daughters out. So Sophie, because Howl was in Market Chipping where Sophie was, the Witch of the Waste just went to the hat shop and was like, you must be Letty, so I'm going to curse you. But she never brings up Howl because obviously Sophie doesn't realize that she's already met Howl. Sophie takes her her curse very well at the beginning, and she doesn't even need to sleep on it. She's like, you know what, this is it, let's go, and she leaves. Okay, so that was one big difference. The other big difference from book to movie is that in the book, there is no war. You know how in the movie there's this huge war and it kind of is the driving plot for a lot of the things that happen? It's the reason why the king summons Howl. It's the reason why the king also summons the Witch of the Waste. It's the reason why there are all these warships and Howl is kind of turning into this bird thing, and the black knob on the door, that actually leads to the war, it seems like, in the movie. So there's that. In the book, there is no war. The only thing that there is a missing prince. The king's brother, Prince Justin, is missing. And so when the king realizes that his brother is missing, he sends his wizard master, Wizard Sullivan, but who is not a female, is a male, out to the waste to go find Justin, and now they're both missing. Sullivan is presumed to be dead. And that's just kind of part of the horrific sense, okay? So there's that. Leave that aside now. Now, because there is no war, the driving plot of the whole book is the Witch of the Waste. There are two curses that the witch places on our two main characters that kind of drive this plot. Sophie's curse, which is kind of like this overarching thing that she just has to deal with, and it becomes difficult for her to maintain relationships with her family. She doesn't want to speak to her sisters anymore because she doesn't want to be unrecognizable, and there's all of that. But she also places a curse on Howl before the book even starts. We don't know, we end up figuring out what the curse is, but it's interesting because the curse is a real poem. I believe, I forget the poet's name. I want to say it's Keats, John Keats, but I'm not entirely sure. So this is where it becomes super crazy because, are you ready? Because the real world actually exists. It's like two different dimensions because Howl and the Witch of the Waste and Wizard Sullivan all know about this world, the real world, where the United Kingdom is, and Howl and Wizard Sullivan are both from Wales. So this real world where there's cars and there's technology and all of this stuff. And when Sophie sees this real world, she has no clue. No clue. She looks at a TV and she's like, there's sound emanating from it, and there's little people on a screen, and then she talks about a car as a motorized carriage with no horses, and like she has no clue, but she also doesn't ask about it. She just leaves it be because she assumes it has something to do with wizards and magic. So the real world exists, but also Sophie's world, where there is just wizards, where it's more like the movie, where it's like there are horses and kings and cobblestones, and like we're not really advanced. The only advancement we have is magic. So these worlds like work together, and the thing that separates them is Howl's door. The black door goes to his sister's house. I guess not his sister's house, but like it goes into the real world where his sister lives. So Howl's very interesting because he is originally human from our real world, and he had a sister, and he just decided once he somehow found our magical world, not our magical world, but once he found the magical world, he like stayed there. And now he kind of goes back and forth, and his sister thinks of him as like deadbeat, doesn't really want him around her children. But obviously in the magical world, he's like super famous, and the king wants to appoint him as like his head master wizard because Sullivan is missing, and he wants Howl to find Prince Justin and all of this stuff. So like it's really interesting seeing like how that actually works, and I really enjoyed actually that point in the book as opposed to the movie. There's a lot more that I enjoy in the movie than I did the book, just because of how magical it seems in the movie and how Miyazaki really has an understanding of what magic feels like visually and can do that very well. But this point about how the real world is running in tandem with this magical world and things are shifting, that was so interesting to me, and I loved it. And I loved how it was just light, and Sophie didn't ask any questions. It was all up to the reader to just assume, and that was really interesting to do because it is a middle grade, so more often than not this would over-explain when it didn't need to, but it allows the reader to kind of just sit with it, be like, I know that's a TV, I know that's a car. I don't need Sophie to ask these questions because I, as the reader, know. So it was really, really interesting. Back to the Witch of the Waste's curse on Howl. Basically, when she cursed Howl, she gave him like 100 days or 1,000 days, and then either at the end of 1,000 days or after all of the things that the curse said would happen will happen, he had to basically go to her, and he would have been compelled to go to her. And she presented danger to him. And we're not entirely sure why or what the Witch of the Waste's purpose is, because she doesn't really talk about Howl's heart like she does in the movie. In the movie, I think it's much more like they were just trying to get the base points of the story across. The movie is much more like the skeleton of the plot, and Miyazaki really just filled it in with things that he thought would be more concise, cohesive, and magical. So let's talk about some of the smaller things, and then I'm going to talk about the like big reveal at the end, and we'll talk about my final ratings. So some small things that are also different in the teacher. In the movie, Madame Sullivan is Howl's teacher. In the book, Howl's teacher is not Sullivan. Actually, Sullivan and him had the same teacher. It is interesting though, because in the book, Howl's teacher is, I forget what her name is, but she is very concerned about Howl and doesn't want him to end up like the Witch of the Waste because they both have a fire demon. And that's the thing also. It's almost as if there were only fire demons to make these deals with. Like the witch just doesn't have a demon of her own, it's a fire demon. They're both fire demons. So in the book, Howl's teacher is still very concerned. She doesn't want Howl to end up like the Witch of the Waste. She wants him to be free of his curse and of his demon. And it comes off much more genuine than in Sullivan's, because she's trying to use him for like the war and also her weird little boy cult thing. That was weird to me. To you? Just me? All right. And then I've kind of talked about it a little bit more, like in the movie, it's so much more, the magic is romanticized. Like, Howl and Sophie go on this, like, sweet little, like, walk across the city, and that doesn't happen in the book. It does happen. Howl and her run on a wind, and so he's, like, holding her, and they're running, but, like, it's in the heat of everything. Like, it's much more climactic, and it's kind of scary, it's adventurous, as opposed to, like, in the movie, where that scene was just magical. There are also all of these times where Sophie switches from being like super, super old to just kind of old to maybe she looks a little bit younger and now she's going back old. There's all of those moments, and that doesn't happen in the book. And if it does happen, we're not shown the visual. There are times where Sophie feels like she is not as tired as she typically would be, or as she would think that she would be as a 90-year-old woman. She's much more active. She's running around. Also, the flower scene when Howl is showing Sophie like this new place, because they end up buying. It's not, you see it in the movie, how the new place that they move to when they move Calcifer looks like Sophie's old hat shop, but it's never like definitive. But in the book, it's definitive. She ends up realizing that, or Howl wants to move the castle because the Witch of the Waste is finding him. And so they are moving the original place of the castle from Port Haven, I believe is the real place there where it is, to Market Chipping where Sophie's place is, and he says there's a hat shop there that's for sale. And Sophie's like, oh, I guess my mom just sold the hat shop. And come to find out later on, because they do end up visiting, which is something that doesn't happen in the story. Mom does come, but only to like leave a sinister gift from Madame Sullivan. In the book, Mom comes, the two sisters come, I want to say all of these people, but I think that's it. Howl's teacher comes, and they all are there to basically reaffirm their relationship with Sophie and let her know, like, we know this happened to you, and we love you, and we care about you, and we're sorry it happened, and we wish you would have told us because we would have been here for you so much sooner. And so that was really cute, but it doesn't happen in the movie. I feel like I got off on that tangent though. Hang on, where was I? So Howl ends up buying Sophie's old hat shop, and one of the doors ends up opening onto like a flower field in the middle of the waste where Calcifer is actually moving the castle. So Howl made this whole beautiful place for Sophie, and it's not that romantic in the book at all. I want to say Howl and Sophie's relationship is barely romantic in the book. It's like all subtext. And it's very interesting because this book was written, I want to say in 86. This was written in 86. So it's interesting where it does and doesn't show its age, because I feel like middle grades today would be so much more obvious with their romance. And this was such a subtle subtext of a relationship budding. And once you kind of understand the full story, you really understand where their relationship developed from. Because if you watched the movie before reading the book, like me, you knew that Calcifer, what Howl gave Calcifer in order for him to live on, in order for the deal to be made, is his heart. And so Howl almost has no emotion or can't easily portray emotion. He gets flighty around emotion. And it's interesting because he is still kind. There is still, in the movie it's Markle, in the book it's Michael. Same character basically, but you know. There is his apprentice that he keeps on who is a younger child. He's 15 in the book, and I want to say in the movie he looks about 8 or 10. No much older than 10 in the movie, but in the book he's about 15 and he's been with him forever. And Michael in the book says, I just showed up one day and I'm an orphan, so I just stayed, and Howl never told me to go. So I stayed, and he just lets me be here, and he's really nice. And as long as you don't try to pin him down, and that's the issue, I feel like. Howl can have these emotions as long as they're in his periphery, and he doesn't have to focus on them too much. Calcifer in the book is also much less cute. In the book, he's described as like blue with green curly hair and orange dots for eyes, and he seemed almost really sinister. He does still have this like Billy Crystal vibe to me, and I'm not sure if I just can't separate Billy Crystal from Calcifer, or if like the book was really that way, because Calcifer was a little like, he was a bit sassy, and it was really funny. And Calcifer and Sophie in both the movie and the book, I feel like, develop their relationship first. And after Sophie and Calcifer become close in both, it makes room for Howl and Sophie to become close. I feel like Sophie throughout most of the book doesn't care for Howl at all until she's questioned about him. And he's like, and then she is like well, he is a good guy, and I do care about him, and I don't want him really to be hurt. And then once she ends up saving Calcifer and Howl and breaking their curse, which is just a little bit different, I do want to say that instead of just taking Calcifer and putting him into Howl's heart, she takes the little lump and she plucks Calcifer off of it. And he's like, I'm free, and like shoots out into like the sky. And then she pushes the heart into Howl. It's so much more grotesque, you guys. And then Howl lives, and he's much, I want to say he's more open. He's not much more open, but he's like, he like loves her. And it's like this moment of where they're just there. Everyone else is around them, and they are just in this moment loving each other. And it's so beautiful. Like, it was so cute. Like, out of all of the moments that I wish that were from the movie, I wish they were in the book, this is one that I'm really glad I got to have separately from the movie, because I enjoyed their, like, you know, when he's like, my chest, and she's like, a heart's a heavy burden to bear, and she's like, Sophie, your hair is like starlight, it's beautiful, and like, that moment is beautiful. But the other moment of this whole house being filled with all of the people who love and care and support Howl and Sophie, and they are just also here loving each other, like, it felt very symbolically like a marriage. Like, you know, in the movies when you see like this couple and they're just standing there, and then like the light shines from above and they have a kiss, and it's like, that is supposed to be like a symbolic marriage. This is what it felt like. All of these people gathered, celebrating, loving them, and they are just in the moment with each other. And I was dying. It was so good. Okay? So good. And now let's talk about one more thing before I talk about a final thing, and then we'll give my rating. The thing is, there was a lot of body horror in this, and I just didn't expect it. And I feel like I view it as body horror because I have seen media like this that has been much more horrifying, but I still was horrified. Okay. So we all know that Prince Justin and Wizard Sullivan had gone missing, right? There is a person, his name is Percival. Oh, wait, let's also talk about Turnip Head real quick, okay? Because Turnip Head in the movie is amazing and beautiful, and I love him, and he's such a friend, and he's great. And in the book, he's horrifying. In the book, Sophie is horrified of the turnip scarecrow the whole time. She keeps sending him away. She keeps like basically using magic to send him away. And she's horrified and terrified of him, and she makes Calcifer run from him, and it's just not the same, okay? And then in the movie, Turnip Head ends up being the prince of the neighboring kingdom, of the warring kingdom, and the Witch of the Waste is like, hey, go fix the war. And he's like, yeah, sure will. And he runs off, right? Okay, in the book, Turnip Head is just a scarecrow that Wizard Sullivan basically imbued with magic because he knew he wasn't going to make it, basically. And so he gave the scarecrow enough magic to try and find him again. It doesn't end up happening because he runs out of magic, and then Sophie wills him back to life when she finds him, and yeah. But let's talk about Prince Justin and Wizard Sullivan. So we all know that they're missing. What ends up happening, we find out, I'll tell you in pieces, we'll go along in the story. So we know that they're missing. Then we end up finding a person. His name is Percival, and he comes into the castle, and Calcifer is like, this man is made up of multiple people. Like Frankenstein. Calcifer doesn't say like Frankenstein, but that's how I'm imagining it. And did anyone else see American Horror Story Coven, where Ethan Peterson's character is like multiple boys, and like, I'm having an anxiety attack just thinking about it, and like, I had to just sit there and casually read it because it's a middle grade. We're just gonna roll right on past it, and I'm sitting here freaking out. So I'm like, who are these two people? And then we get into the final thing, right, where Sophie is confronting the Witch of the Waste, and she sees a body, a headless body. So basically the witch has this power where she can cut pieces off of a body and it will still live. okay? So what she ended up doing is she lured Prince Justin, and then she knew Wizard Sullivan was coming, and so she got both of them, and she chose her favorite parts out of each of their bodies, made a perfect man body. Percival has the remaining pieces, and the reason she wants Howl is because she wants his head. And she's going to chop off his head and stick it on this mishmash of two other men bodies. There's this one scene, so Howl comes to save Sophie and he fights the Witch of the Waste. And Sophie takes the body, the headless body, she doesn't lift it, but she guides it back to their house. You guys, I could not. Okay, so since the Witch of the Waste is the driving plot and not the war, she does end up being the bad guy. So Howl ends up figuring out who her fire demon is. The reason why all of this was also happening is because the fire demon was dying. So what ends up happening, the deal with the fire demons and the wizards, okay, is that when they fall, they know that they're going to die once they hit the ground. If a wizard catches a star and the star consents to a deal, the star will be a fire demon, and you have to, as the wizard, give something up to the fire demon so that way it will live a human life. So that way the fire demon will live and you will also live but also be more powerful. So the wizards give their hearts to their fire demons. Now, the Witch of the Waste has already been alive for so long that the fire demon is running out of her heart. The heart is about to run out of fuel, basically. So the fire demon is looking for another heart as well. And the fire demon is corrupting now the Witch of the Waste into doing things like this weird magic thing, okay? Because it's not like the Witch of the Waste is trying to make her Frankenstein man for a husband. The fire demon is creating a new person to take the heart of, basically. I don't understand that. I was just horrified by the Frankenstein pieces, and so I was just like, okay, let's go, let's finish. Howl defeats the Witch of the Waste. Then he finds her heart, and the fire demon destroys the heart. The fire demon is gone. Fire demon is no more, Witch of the Waste is no more, and that is the end of the story. Once the Witch of the Waste is no more, the curse on Sophie is lifted. She is now a normal person. Whatever she did to Prince Justin and Wizard Sullivan is fixed, and Sophie's in her magical moment with Howl, so it's only an off-topic mention basically, that the Prince Justin and Wizard Sullivan are back to their normal selves and they're shaking hands and all of that. And so it's just so weird. The ending is very fast in the book, just like it is in the movie. It just wraps up all of a sudden. But it was really good. I really enjoy these two pieces in tandem. I think once you kind of have both of them, once you've experienced both of them, you have a much better not understanding of the story, because they're two different stories basically, but you get more from it, and I think that's kind of what matters. It was really so good. So there were a lot of pieces I enjoyed from the book. I feel like the movie, there's nothing really that is upsetting or I don't like about the movie, aside from the fact that some of the things kind of feel like they're not fully understood, because Miyazaki really just changed a lot of the book to fit a movie kind of process. So it is hard to say which was better, because I do enjoy both of them, but I think the defining thing for me, which makes the movie better than the book, is the fact that the book doesn't feel like it's written for a middle grade audience at all. And I wonder if it is because of how old it is, written in the 80s, which is 40 years ago now. It's a whole person ago now. A lot of things like the romance is subtext. It's not as magical as it could be. Some things aren't as deeply as explained. I don't feel like at all it is a bad book. I just don't feel like the target audience would love it as much as I'm loving it now. And I don't even feel like I needed the movie to love the book as much as I love it. I really just feel like the book was more more adult. The only thing that didn't make it adult was the fact that like there was no sex and no cussing. But really, it just felt adult. Sophie's an adult. She's like 23. I mean, maybe you could even make a claim for new adults in this, but like, she's an adult. And everything, all the problems that she's really having are adult problems, and everything is subtext and it doesn't make sense. And like, if I was a younger reader, I don't think that I would fully have enjoyed this, because a lot of it is subtext. And I only enjoy subtext now as an adult because I don't like being told things. I want to feel it. I want you to make me feel, and I will understand. But as a young reader, you need to develop that ability, and you have to develop that, and maybe you don't even like that ability. So like, or like that ability, but maybe you don't even like that in storytelling, but you have to develop that in order to have it. And I don't know that this necessarily wrote for its audience. And that is a bit of a bummer, but I still so deeply enjoyed it that like, I think the only reason it's not getting a 5-star from me, it is a 4-star book, but it's not getting a 5-star because I don't believe it was written for its audience. And I feel like that is a very important thing. And especially now that we're in this conversation where YA doesn't feel like it's written for young adults anymore, it's written for just adults and the adult market, I feel like it's very important for books to be, if the author intends them for a specific age range, you should write for that age range and not for the adults who are going out of their way to find something at a lower level. I don't think there's anything wrong with adults reading middle grade and YA. I read a lot of middle grade and YA, but it is something that as an adult, I'm keeping in mind that this should not be written exactly for me, and I feel like it was. And not that I'm hating it, but I don't think that that makes it a perfect book then. And I also feel like the movie is so obviously magical and for kids that like, there is nothing, I would have to say that the movie is better because it not only did it understand its audience, but it also was so great and it had all the things that I like in it from the book, and it also had more. Like in the book, Howl courting Sophie's sister, and like throughout the majority of the book, even though Sophie's sister wasn't engaged or didn't care for him, like that's something that as a young reader, I wouldn't understand why I'm supposed to care about Howl after that. Like this whole story about Howl not having a heart and not being able to express his true emotions forthright without just allowing them to be in the periphery is something that I only understand as an adult because I understand the metaphor that we're doing with the heart and how the demon and how Calcifer is much more emotional and sassy and kind of has a lot of Howl's personality once he begins to have a personality again. There's just kind of a lot there. And I don't know necessarily any middle schoolers, and we'll say middle grade being for middle schoolers, which I don't necessarily believe all the time. I don't know a lot of middle schoolers who would pick up on that or care about it or understand or have the empathy needed to realize like, oh, you're not supposed to hate Howl. You're supposed to understand why he can't have feelings and why he is chasing after people who don't care about him, because it's easy to do that because he doesn't have to have real feelings. And, it's a lot. But the ending, so you know how in the movie, Calcifer comes back and he was like, plus it's gonna rain. And like, he does the same thing in the book. He leaves and then he comes back into the fireplace and Howl's like, you didn't have to do that. And Calcifer is like, I know, but it's raining. And I'm just like, my poor baby fire demon, I just love you so much. Like, I can't. They were so both beautiful, and if you love the general story of Howl's Moving Castle, I think you will enjoy both of them, regardless of their differences. So I have talked for a very long time. I just had so much to say. Like, I enjoyed this so much, and I felt like all of the differences were so uniquely different, and I felt like they obviously made sense why they cut a lot of it out for the for the movie because it is a movie and you have to be just much more concise when you're doing that. But still, it was so wonderful. It was so lovely. I just enjoyed it so much, you guys. So this is one of those rare moments I feel like where in the book the adaptation videos I am just enjoying both of them, and one is not, I said the movie is better, but it's not so much more better to where you don't, I'm not recommending the book. I'm recommending both of them. Have a nice little weekend to yourself. Enjoy it. It's so good. If you would like to continue this conversation down below in the comments, let me know what you thought were good points in the book, bad points in the book, likes, dislikes, differences that you thought could have been put in the movie, all that jazz. Talk to me down in the comments, and I will just see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!